Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to, multiple channels, the Spurs Talk Show. We're on Twitter, and of course, we are also today bringing back Sean Butler TV. I was about to say Football Link. We're not doing it on Football Link today because Johnny's away. Johnny's in Dubai, and we are very much on the football finance side of things today. We have a lot to go through. A couple of weeks ago, Deloitte came out with the Deloitte Money League details. Obviously, with my and my absence, I haven't had a chance to really go through this stuff. And of course, this stuff is my sort of, I don't know, little passion project. It's something that I have a bit of a background in, or a lot of a background in, not necessarily football finance, but having spent 9 years of my career in investment banking and running a few different businesses into the ground, as well as working in ad tech for Google, etc. over the last 7-8 years over there in Australia and New York and America. Got a bit of a fashion to sort of dig into the business side of things, and I find it fascinating. And I think you guys should too. I think it's an absolute necessity if you want to have a well-rounded opinion of how your football club is doing. That you also need to understand as best you can if it's of interest to you. It's not of interest to everyone. Most people don't have the time, the inclination, the interest, or even the resources to be able to dig into that stuff. And that's why I try to break this down for you. So we've got a lot to go through today. It's not just about Tottenham. There's going to be lots of data and detail, lots of articles to read through, and we're going to have to jump around a little bit because there's stories regarding from the Deloitte Money League. There's stories that overlap into the commercial side of football with regards to stadiums, and this massive amount of money and exploration from so many football teams into expanding their stadiums and to try to do what Daniel Levy has been doing for 5 years, 6 years now at Tottenham, with regards kind of milking the cash cow that is a multifunctional stadium of the highest technical and technological order to be able to derive revenues from the people that are not necessarily directly related to the football club, with the hope that at some point either they get paid off with a takeover, and or in the meantime that some of that diversification of responsibility of revenue generation gets poured back into the football club. And we are seeing that with Tottenham. A lot of people say the stadium was promised to be a game changer, and yet nothing has manifested or materially changed with regards our successes on the pitch, if in anything. And I 100% subscribe to this belief that since the new stadium, our efforts on the field have gone backwards. I think that's the data and the statistics and the facts are very much there for everyone to see. We're going in a bit of a backward trajectory right now. And so that's a concern, but there are always context to analyze. And like I say, it's not necessarily for everyone, but if it's for you, then smash a like button if you enjoy the content on the Spurs Talk Show. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. If you are capable and able to, then drop over to the Sean Butler TV channel, where I promise you there's so much to go through right now. And so I've neglected that channel for the last 6 months because of what's been going on in my life, or 10 months probably. But I'm going to be pouring out content after content now over the next, for hopefully ongoing or until things change. But with regards to all of these things that I haven't had a chance to go through, there's so many stories. And on today's episode, we're going to be looking a little bit at Newcastle United and how much money the PIF fund really have to spend with a $1 billion decision imminent. We have to also look at Aston Villa in some pretty fine detail, if I'm entirely honest. 96% ratios of their revenue is currently allocated towards their wages, not the squad cost ratio, just their wages. And with the inbound impact of people like Marcus Rashford and Asin Sao and a few other players that they signed over the last few weeks, those numbers are looking to be stretched. Now, there might be some conspiracy theories that you might even hear on this particular channel today. Now, if you are watching this on Sean Butler TV, I do want you to know that Sean Butler TV is not a Tottenham channel. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that we have to ignore Tottenham Hotspur because we are talking to fans of all football clubs. But as a Tottenham fan, you may find at times that if you are the subject of a video on that channel that happens to not be about Tottenham Hotspur, then you may find that I will criticize or critique the data and sort of look to stretch some arguments. And that's what we do, like to explore ideas. Doesn't mean that we're right all the time. In fact, we're probably wrong quite a lot of the time. But either way, please don't think that this is hatred of your club. Please don't think that I'm being a hater of what you're up to or what your owners are up to. It's simply the exploration of topics and discussion points. And look, a lot of the time, people in the past have called myself and Johnny, for example, delusional when we were making suggestions around things and loopholes within the PSR and the FFP rules. Of course, those things are changing because of an improvement of a rule regulation that happened last spring, and those things are coming in. We have to remind you probably throughout the show here of what is going on with regards Europa and Champions League and Conference League rules with the 70% threshold cap on squad cost ratios, and that is going to be removed with regards the Premier League because it was voted in, although the PFA are potentially going to be suing the Premier League clubs ahead of the government regulator. See, all of these stories, I don't know how I'm going to squeeze them all in, but they all kind of overlap into a myriad and a plethora of different kind of angles in which you can take to see where football ownership in the Premier League and around Europe is heading. The direction of travel is a concern. It should be a concern for everyone because it's not really clear. And on top of that, you do have the idea that is sort of percolating around my mind, at least, around why it was that Aston Villa, for example, jumped on board the dissidents away from the approval of those rules. I made a video about this on Sean Butler TV last year saying that only one more team essentially needs to pivot away from the grandstanding of the other majority, with the rules being that you need 16 votes for a change to the Premier League rules. And at last count, 5 teams had pivoted away, Aston Villa being one of them. And we were questioning and sort of scratching our heads as to why. And then when you find out that John Duran moves to the Saudi leagues in a couple of weeks ago for a ridiculous fee, 62 million pound profit was recorded on Aston Villa's figures. Maybe you're going to see more of the same as a favor, as a you scratch our back, we will scratch yours, as the teams with the most money but aren't able to really spend it need to find a way to kind of collude or to act almost like a cabal to be able to stand up to the other 15 teams in the Premier League who are more inclined to see rules that will restrict their ability to spend going forward. And that's what we saw for the first time really back in April of last year when Manchester City, Newcastle, Aston Villa and Manchester United all voted against a providing principle, and Chelsea abstained from the vote. But in so doing, the Premier League only got that approval through by the skin of their teeth. Now you have the PFA coming out saying that they are maybe going to consider legal action against the Premier League clubs because of the fear of what this new rule is going to inject into the zeitgeist regarding the way that some clubs are going to spend. As a kind of quick recap, the squad cost ratio rules are subject to change as of the 26-27 season, I believe it is. And that essentially they're moving away now from this 90% to 80% to 70% threshold where it will eventually finish. And they are going to move to a system whereby there is a multiplier effect based on the revenue of the bottom earning club in the Premier League, and that all teams will be able to spend what they want with regards to squad cost ratios up to a limit of 5 times the revenue of the lowest generating team. Now that obviously puts strangleholds on and kind of vice-like grips over the ability to spend for teams like Manchester City, who are probably going to be the second club to breach the €1 billion threshold. Real Madrid this year, we'll see it very shortly, and the Deloitte Money League did in fact make that first movement. They got over £1 billion or €1 billion in revenue, in no small part because of a pivot towards their new stadium. And as we'll go through some of the more detailed data on the Swiss Ramble report, you will see that Barcelona are probably the most affected in terms of revenue droppage over the last 12 months. And that is because primarily that they had to move away from the Nou Camp, the Camp Nou, into a local stadium whilst they have their stadium subject to rebuild, which they're going to look to move into permanently in the 27-28 season. And everybody else that had match day receipts moving up or down by certain amounts of millions, largely impacted by the the increase or the decrease in the amount of European matches that they played during the season. Now, there's other factors, of course, guys. As I mentioned this on a previous video, one of the major reasons Stefan Borson mentioned as to why the January transfer window was as frustrating as it was for so many teams, and why so little happened, with the exception of Manchester City, outside of that final few days, was because it wasn't Stefan Borson that said that. It was Johan Lang who referenced it in his Tottenham Hotspur video on the Tottenham Hotspur YouTube channel. He said that one of the major kind of elephants in the room is the fact that European teams that were playing in European competition had an extra 2 games in their kind of before the knockout stages that led into January. And so they didn't want to lose those players until those games were finished and complete. And those things didn't complete until the final week of January. So elephants in the room, lots of things moving, lots of things changing. And we will hopefully be able to make some sense of some of them today and over the next, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. I think there's so many stories out here right now. I've got literally 25 tabs in front of me, guys. So I spent 10 minutes just giving you a little intro, and we are going to begin. Before I do, guys, just quickly on last night, I was pretty angry last night with regards to the Tottenham Hotspur performance in the Liverpool game. On reflection, not that I've changed my mind. I do think that the game was pitiful and embarrassing and shambolic, and all of the adjectives you could possibly want to throw towards Ange and the team are probably more within, or you are more well within your rights to feel the way you feel. However, I did watch and listen to Last Word on Spurs, and there was a man on there called Jason who did put out a really compelling argument as to why maybe we shouldn't be overly harsh on Ange for some of the decisions that happened. And I just wanted to kind of caveat, because I actually listened to it and I thought it was a really well structured argument that, what can Ange do with regards fundamentally restructuring the style of play in that second half? Because obviously the first half didn't work. The midfielders were abject. Obviously, I said this before, 21 times you turn over possession unnecessarily in 45 minutes of football. And against Liverpool, you're going to need to be at your best anyway. And even if you are at your best, it's still a very difficult place to play. Very, very tough to get something out of the game with only a 1-goal slender lead. When you factor in the 11 injuries that we had, 12 now, including Richalison, it becomes an uphill battle. And only then can you really expect anything at all, even a slim chance of getting anything out of the game. But you need everyone to be on point, and the midfielders really weren't. But when the argument comes, well, what could we do differently? I think that Jason man made a really fascinating point where he said, without any notable frontline man, without any target man, you can't really decide to pump the ball long. You can't really do that with Matisse Tell, Sonny, Micky Moore. Even if Brennan Johnson was fit, obviously he wasn't, but there's no real option to do anything fundamentally with regards pumping the ball long that's going to have any outcomes. You don't have someone like a Brennan Johnson who can inject some pace. Maybe you can introduce a Micky Moore earlier. Maybe you can make some pivots, but ultimately the structure of the team and the style of football that you're trying to implement from the get-go with what you have available doesn't really have many ways and mechanisms to change. And I do think it's a relevant point, and it extends the argument, in my opinion, that the 11 injuries, 12 now, is not just an excuse. It is an explanation. It's an unfortunate one, and it's something that you have to consider when you're baking in your context of how you feel after last night. I think 99% of Tottenham fans were probably realistically looking for just more out of the effort, more out of the performance than the outcome. I think that a lot of people shook hands with the idea that it was going to be a very, very tough night, and we never knew what was going to happen. But at the very least, you have to consider the efforts of the 6,000 Tottenham fans that travelled up there, 7.5 hours on a coach, stuck in traffic the entire way. And then 5-6 hours back, depending on where you live, you're not going to get home until 4 o'clock in the morning, etc. And, so you need to see more. But I don't necessarily think that finding more from that particular 11 on the pitch should be at the feet of Ange. Of course, the buck stops at the top with regards. He's the manager, he picks the team, and he has to send them out there with the right motivations. But if he's capable of saying the same sort of things and putting together the right words in the right order to be able to get a lift and a desire and a will to win from the team in the first leg, then what happened last night. And I think that ultimately, for me, I think that the boys just looked scared and timid and afraid, especially in that middle of the park. And we beat ourselves before we got out there. And for me, I really hold the players individually who couldn't lift themselves for a game of that magnitude to account more than I do Ange. I think his hands were tied behind his back. and also more than Daniel Levy. I think Daniel Levy could have done a lot more potentially, and we'll find out why in a minute with regards to finances and with regards what is accessible resources. But given the nature of the January window and given the golfing class, I don't think it really matters if you had assigned a monster number 6 in January or Mark Gahey. I really don't think that that the gulf in the class between the two teams would be closed materially to make it a better fight by just adding 1 or 2 more players in the January transfer window. For me, it came down to who wanted it more, and also, you know, being able to be confident and stand up to the challenges in front of you, and especially in that midfield and in the front line. I thought Decky was horrendous. I thought Sonny was horrendous. Matisse Tell, on reflection, I watched the highlights, the extended highlights back. I don't think he really did very much. I said there was nice things to see from him, and there were some, but you know, very little. It's his debut. I thought the defense did their best, but the midfield is where the games are won and lost. And for me, it really wasn't good enough. And I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, between now and the end of the season, in trying to get these people to do more on a consistent level. But then in the summer, I think you could make a very strong argument right now that our entire midfield, with people like Bissouma, people like Bentancur, need to be sunset, moved on. And we need to kind of rebuild that from the ground up, because we have some really good, strong talent coming through in the likes of, I do like Pape Sarr. I just think he has to improve in very many areas of his distribution game. But Lucas Berghvall, I think, is a real shining light. And I'm looking to see Archie Gray get promoted into that midfield where he should be. But with regards some of the more senior players, just not good enough. And that's where my frustrations really do primarily lie. Anyway, that was just wanted to get that out of the way. That was a 5 minutes kind of a clarification of where I feel about what happened yesterday. Let me just quickly run through and say hi to some people. Roy Viking, good to see you, my man. Big up Sean, big up Drew. Everyone smash a like for the new show. And while you're at it, you can't go wrong subscribing to the Spurs Talk Show. Let's get it. You must be over on Sean Butler TV. Love to see it. If you do fancy spending some time on the Sean Butler TV, it's always nice to get those numbers up. And also make sure you hit the subscribe if you do like football finance. Joseph, we can only pray for a takeover. Oh, that's the other story. Sorry. There's stories from chief football finance writer at the Football London, where Ali Gold works, and we're going to get these things up. I really hope we can. Let me see if I can just present my screen. That's okay. Hang on a second. Let me just get that. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I bet you it's going to tell me I've got to shut the whole thing down before I can get up. If not, I'm going to have to read it out to you. Sorry, guys. These are the problems that I have to go through. 1 second. Give me 2 seconds. I know it's going to have to quit before it allows me to quit my screen. You know what? That's really annoying. Stay there for 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Can I do that? I'm back. Told you I'll be back. Back in 2 seconds. Now I need to get all my my last my notes up here, and let me just get them. Here we go. Where are we? This is this is an absolute shit show now, isn't it? There's one. Open that. There's the other. Open that. Sorry, everybody. I can't believe I've screwed that completely up. Let's get the Swiss Ramble going. Swiss Ramble Money League. Bang, bang, bang. We're getting there. And I think that is what I need to show you all. Daniel Levy's 222 million. Bang. Yahoo. Here we go. Right. Can you all still see me and hear me? I hope you can. I hope you can all see me. There's 550 people here, and I just had to pop out of my own stream for a second to reload. Now, let me see. Now, let's hope that the share the screen button is working. Let's start with the Money League of 2023, 2024. Is it on the screen? It's not on the screen yet. There we go, guys. There we go. Okay. Let me get this open as well. And I think we're good. I think I have absolutely everything I need now. 1 second. God, what an absolute disgrace I am. I'm going to start with this article right here from. We're not going to start with the PFA. We're going to start with this idea that where is it? Here we go. Sorry, guys. Absolute disaster class. Let's start with Tottenham, shall we? Let's start with this the Football London topic around Tottenham Hotspur. Here we go, guys, for you. And we're going to pivot around. Like I say, you have to pay attention. Obviously, already a shit show with my preparation for this video. So Tottenham's 2-0 win over Brentford this weekend may have allayed some creeping fears regarding the relegation battle for the club. Whilst when Spurs moved into their 63,000-seater stadium, world-class home back in 2019, it heralded a major change for the club, but it was the finances that would get the bigger boost, with competitive success remaining inconsistent. Talk of Enoch and Spurs champ Daniel Levy being willing to listen to offers for the club has swirled around for a couple of years, with reports of a 3.1 billion bid for the club from American investment firm MSP Capital having come to nothing. Thank God that didn't happen. Look at the money laundering stuff that was on my lips a lot back in the summer. MSP Capital are an absolute mess with regards what happened with the Everton deal, £100 million that just sort of vanished for the stadium. It's now okay because of the Freaking Group, but the things that were happening over in Italy as well, and a whole bunch of sanctions that were placed on them or third parties that are engulfed with them. I mentioned there's a spider web of financial corruption that's going on, and MSP Capital were right in the heart of that, at least accusations of them being so last summer. But 3.1 billion didn't materialize. It came to nothing, while in recent months talk of a potential sale or a minority stake purchase from the Middle East with Amanda Staveley leading on it has also been a hot topic. I'm going to scoot past this bit where they just talks about Daniel Levy for a second. And also, I can read it out. One Spurs supporting friend described the feeling to me as a club now being a stadium with a football club attached to it, and that the competitive desire to win trophies has been replaced by overzealous financial prudence and a greater desire to see commercial revenues and matchday income increased. And with that came a reluctance to spend appropriately in the transfer market. Now, that's just someone's opinion. It's not even the football financial writer's opinion. That's just a friend of his. You know, I fundamentally disagree with that. I know a lot of you disagree with me, and that's okay. They're just opinions. But with regards, let me just double check everything's still okay. Good to see you, Rakdos Madness. Good to see Sean out. And Jin says, Al Panisse. Love you to see it. All good, says John. Good to see you, mate. Hope you're okay. Big up, Sean. Big up, Lisa. Spot on analysis on the game. Looking forward to this. Yeah, hopefully this is going to be a little bit more clean than the first 20 minutes have started. 615 people in the house, guys. Smash a like. Let's get back to the story. Whether that's a fair view of the current situation at Spurs is an entirely personal one, but in a window where the club really needed to bring in reinforcements given the state of the squad and the growing list, loan deals for 19-year-old Tell, Lens defender Kevin Danso, and a permanent move for goalkeeper Kinsky from Slavia Prague were all that materialised. That's not all that materialised, actually, sir. We had about 15, 17-year-olds coming, didn't we? A couple of 15-year-olds as well. Yeah, school party. They've all got to be home before 8. There was some talk of a £70 million move for Mark Gahey. This isn't the part of the story I want to get to. So I think we can sort of glance through some of the Tottenham financials here, but I might have to sort of rinse and repeat a little bit of it, because in a minute we are going to be talking about the stadium spend that is this new transition, this new shift. And you know, look, in a world where everybody else is happy to throw mud at Daniel Levy, in the interest of balance, if you want to hear those reasons why you hate Daniel Levy, you can find them everywhere. I'm going to be probably, as I usually do, just to kind of level out the content narrative here, not because I 100% want to, nosh off Daniel Levy, but because of the things and the trends that we're going to see in a moment. When we look at the Deloitte Money League and we look at other articles, you're going to probably hear me say a few times Daniel Levy is ahead of the curve, and it shouldn't be overlooked and forgotten, as what he has been building for the last 5 years has been something that now everybody else in ownership is moving into on a massive, massive multi-billion-dollar scale. Now, with that comes additional risk. If Daniel Levy thinks that he has the best stadium in the world, and that will forever be the case, and that the desires of Beyonce to play at Tottenham 4 times a year and the Rolling Stones and whoever else, if he thinks that he will not be challenged for the competitiveness of and the desire to perform at new multi-billion-dollar stadiums that are going to be happening. Liverpool have already improved their stadium. Manchester City are doing the same. Newcastle are clearly going to have a new stadium. Manchester United, well, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe stopped worrying about the bonuses of £50 a day stewards and starts to focus on why he was brought in the first place, which was to add some financial oomph and also to lead and steer that club back to, what was it, Project 21, whatever it's called, then Manchester United probably have to do the same sort of thing. But restructuring, rebuilding, refurbing a stadium that holds 72,000 people is no cheap feat. It's no small feat. It's no mean feat. But do they have the ability? Do they have the resources within the backgrounds, the kind of the infrastructure within the infrastructure of the stadium to be able to host the other sorts of things that are meaningful in the revenue generation of Tottenham Hotspur's coffers, which are, you know, sort of smaller events? It doesn't always have to be about Beyonce. There's lots and lots and lots of other ways that Tottenham make a hell of a lot of money, and we'll talk about that. We're also going to be looking at Aston Villa in a second and comparing the comparatives, the comparables, because Aston Villa has become a talking point of a comparison of the direction of travel for clubs with ambition versus clubs without. And we need to look at not just the squad cost ratios and the wage ratio of Aston Villa at 96%, and the reason why they're not worried about that, which is madness to me, unless you have an ace up your sleeve. And as I said at the start of this, to me, I believe Aston Villa, with their owners, El Naswari, I think it is, moving towards the likes of Chelsea and the likes of the PIF and the Clear Lake Capitals, where they have all of that investment in the Middle East. I think that there is a future. We will scratch yours. And I think it was the first demonstration of which was seen with John Duran's ridiculously overpriced bid for £70 million. As Johnny quite correctly said the other day, expect him back in the Premier League or a top club in Europe in the next 18 months. But in terms of Aston Villa, it's a wonderful way to rejiggle and rejuggle their financials in this particular price point as we move out of this ratio, this 96% squad ratio, which is ridiculously high in a world where the squad cost ratios are moving towards 70%. Now, where Aston Villa have the problem and the predicament is the rubber meets the road when they play in Europe, which of course they are doing now, and they will continue to try to do next season by their league position in all likelihood over the next 4 months. But actually what's interesting is that sometimes it's not a case of what's good for the goose is what's good for the gander. Sometimes being in Europe when you're in a financial transitional period, whilst it might add 40, 50 million to the coffers, if you are a team that has a 96% squad ratio and you a wage to turnover ratio, and you have to get that number down to 70% in order to qualify for the financial restrictions within the Champions League in Europe, then you need 2 things to happen at once. You need your revenues to grow and you need your wages to fall. And when they are out there in January paying 75% of Marcus Rashford's wages at 275 grand a week, taking on Essen Sals and the other players that they signed as well, then if they decide to take that move, make it permanent, that's a £14 million a year outlay on a player that is a massive risk at the moment, that doesn't make any sense when you look at the short-term financial contributions and consistent themes that are happening at Aston Villa. So to me, I believe that the reason why they move towards the sort of dissidence of the Premier League rule makers in April last year was because they probably have some future promises from certain people and certain teams around the world where money doesn't seem to matter. We shall see on that one, guys. Let's get back to the Tottenham story. However, a look at the estimates for 2023-24 accounts from football finance expert Swiss Ramble shows that Spurs' amortization charges, which is the cost of the balance sheet of player incomings, where the guaranteed sum of a deal is spread over the length of the contract, is set to jump from 108 million to 141 million for 23-24. Great to see you doing bids again, Sean. Hope you're well. Thank you very much, my man. Guys, because I've got like 15 pages open here and they're all on the same tab, the same screen as the as my Chrome, I probably won't necessarily be able to see all of your comments, but I will certainly flick through and come back to them when I get a chance to. Where was I? Here we go. A significant factor in the impact of the profitability has been the stadium expenditure, and the anticipation for the longer term has been that the club can be profitable again regularly. But that kind of model where a business makes a profit is a rare thing in football, and one of the reasons why some question whether the idea of a sports team as an asset class is correct. So much capital is required, and there are so many variables that can't be controlled that make it impossible to sustain success year after year. I feel like those are words out of my very mouth, aren't they? Areas outside of your control that impact your ability to deliver success sustainably. Someone's been watching the Spurs talk show. I'm joking. There's no such thing as original thought anymore. Everyone can think for themselves and figure it out. I want to get back to this part. Where's the actual the section here where we talk about the takeover? Here we go. The takeover starts here. Why would Levy and Inic want to engage in heavy spending and add burden to the balance sheets if they are willing to sell? Think of it from the Mike Ashley playbook. Ashley was a deeply unpopular figure at Newcastle United, but the tight ship that was kept with the accounts and the PSR headroom they provided the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund when they initially arrived made it an attractive proposition. Staveley, of course, ran point on that deal for the PIF and guided the Magpies from behind the scenes for the best part of 3 years. The 51-year-old financier would see the same kind of benefit in Spurs, but also the possibility for so much more, given the stadium and strong balance sheet. While the Premier League bubble from the outside looking in looks destined to never burst, the uncomfortable truth is that it will at some stage. When broadcast deals start to stagnate and decline, which isn't going to happen in the Premier League, by the way. If anything, it's only going to go up. What's happening in France is a very unique, specified and specific set of circumstances that will not have contagion, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Sometimes I usually am. But what's happening in France is a massive problem for the French clubs. And one of the reasons why Daniel Levy loves a bargain. I said this in a video, I think it was in early January or late December. I said, watch out. I think we were talking about a midfielder at the time. I forget his name, who is absolutely phenomenal. Someone in the comments, let me know, remind me who I was talking about. A brilliant midfielder that can play that holding six, but has the ability to drive the ball forward and is an incredible passer. And I thought that Daniel Levy would be all over that one. Instead, we went for Kevin Danso, and I was really impressed with him last night. I thought he had a really solid foot. I mean, imagine that for a debut. What a baptism of fire. And I thought he didn't let himself down at all, despite, conceding 4 goals. That was just a golfing class. But the French thing with regards to TV revenue and media broadcast deals is unique there. Germany have their own issues, but they're going to be expanding into international rights. Same as Brazil. Interesting. I've got a whole Brazil topic to talk about with you guys that I think is mentioned briefly in the Deloitte Money League story, which I'll come to in a moment. But on the Sean Butler TV, you'll be seeing more and more about Brazilian football and the TV and the infrastructure spend and everything else that's going on over there. It's quite crazy. And the fact that one of those teams has actually appeared in the top 20 list, I believe, of the Money League for the first time since the 1970s is a demonstration of the investment that is happening over in Brazilian football. It's quite crazy. And the beneficiaries of such are obviously certain teams that do well from that investment. But in terms of the Premier League football broadcast money, well, because of international expansion, because of the new ability the ability for them to renegotiate their own deals with certain international contracts expiring soon. The far more likely scenario than it drying up with regards to the Premier League is that it's going to expand. And then, of course, don't forget you have the Netflix of sports idea that has been bandied around for the best part of a decade, but only really come to the zeitgeist, the furore, the front line of the zeitgeist in Premier League football when Simon Jordan started talking about it a few years ago. And, I was very much on the same page with him regards that. I think that you could see a 3 to 4 times increase in the revenue stream generation of Premier League clubs, or at least a slice of their pie, and we'll look at them in a second, that is down to broadcast money. If you were to assume that you could sell a yearly subscription or a monthly subscription to the Premier League where you get access to all the games for, say, £10 a month, which I think is cheap given how many eggs you get for £10 these days. Insane. Absolutely. I went to the co-op earlier. Absolutely insane. The prices right now. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, £10 a month is a moot point. the amount of money that would literally triple the amount of money that the clubs, all of the clubs, would get from Netflix. And the beautiful thing about that deal would be that, you know, the current Sky broadcast and the TNT deal for the UK residents, well, that is still to this day structured on the idea that the team that gets the most airtime gets the most money. So it's a layered effect that has a logarithmic trajectory, like on a chart. If you're looking at, I don't know, population growth since the 1900s, right? It's here, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Same thing happens with football revenue when it comes to broadcast deals, not just because of the amount of games that are played at the top end of the league relative to the bottom end, when you include European football, etc., but because of the amount of eyeballs and the amount of advertising revenue, and they distribute that money in accordance with the team that gets the attention. Under the Netflix deal, you will have everyone gets access to all of the games, and the ads will be shown indiscriminately to everybody who watches them at the time. Or if there's no ads, if you have a different tier where you have, you know, £7 a month plus you get ads, or £12 a month but no ads, or whatever it might be, similar to what they currently do, then all of that stuff will be distributed on, at least according to the proposal that has been banded around, that you will see a scenario whereby Burnley or Southampton or whoever it would be at the bottom end of the chain would be getting a similar amount of money, or the same amount of money in an ideal world, as Manchester City or Liverpool. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing. I think the leveling of the playing field, I've said this 1,000 times, and this is not just a thing that I think about Tottenham Hotspur and Daniel Levy and the plight that he has with regards the expectations of football fans, but I think that it's very easy for football fans, whichever shade of color your shirt happens to be, or the animal on your badge, most fans have ridiculously higher expectations of people and things that they are invested in, that yet they have no ultimate control over, than they do of their own life. They have higher expectations of the government. They have higher expectations of their school, if the teachers. They have higher expectations of the NHS. They have higher expectations of their football team. But a lot of them don't have that high expectation or demands of things that they do in their own life. And I think that's just a part of human nature. I spoke about this on the last one when I did Tottenham Reflections. I think it's a psychological norm. Read some psychological books, you'll find that it's a consistency. People lean towards and attract the negative because of their demands of others that they don't hold themselves to the same standards of. And I believe that with regards to football clubs, it's also an intellectual consistent theme that you are going to be more invested in Tottenham as a Tottenham fan, or Aston Villa as an Aston Villa fan, than you are in the Premier League lawmakers, than you are in the referees, than you are in what's happening in the world of other teams that you're competing against but don't care about to the same degree. And so, ergo, you are going to have a struggle to find the time, inclination, interest, or resources to educate yourself on the things outside of the immediate things that are in front of your face. And consequently, therefore, when things go wrong, you're probably looking to blame things that are directly related to your club, rather than analyzing, or at least engaging in the plausibility that there's things outside of your control that are also responsible. And for me, the inability to have a level playing field is, on a financial basis, is part of the problem. Obviously, I don't necessarily want to advocate for a draft system. It would be impossible to implement unless every team around world football was to also implement the same sort of model, because otherwise you would have, you know, one set of rules for some and others for others. And then you follow the money, right? Wherever the money is will be the place where the rules don't suffocate the ambitions of some, in order to prevent to present a better level playing field. So the draft system only works in an enclosed environment like college, American football, basketball, etc., whereby there really isn't the same attention or advocacy of competitive natures in areas of the world where those sports are still played. American football is only played in America, from what I understand, at least on a professional level. So I think Canada as well, but it's that's a place where maybe more of the BTEC players end up going. Anyway, geez, when you're doing monologues and you're just looking at the camera and you can't even see the super chat. So let me pop in to see the super chat. Let me press pause for a second. Let me see what we're going. We've got some. We've got one super chat from Blaine. Thatchers is on me this weekend, Shorty. I appreciate you, mate. Blaine, you're an absolute legend, my man. I really do appreciate you. That's really, really kind. Very generous. You don't need to do it, my man. but I am. You know me. I know people think I'm like I don't know, some sort of like malfunctioning alcoholic or whatever. It's not. If you go to a pub on a Friday and a Saturday night, and you see the same girl or the same guy in there on a Friday or Saturday night, and they always got a drink in their hand, do you therefore assume that they are an alcoholic on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a Sunday? You shouldn't. It's just the environment in which you find them, and if that is a common norm. And for me, and it might not be, it probably isn't for most people, but for me, I consider these sessions as being down the pub. I wouldn't talk about Tottenham sober in anywhere near as much passion or detail as I do with a beer. So I know it might be Friday at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock, but you know, yeah. But thank you very much, Blaine. I very much appreciate you. But I can assure you that, you know, apart from obviously right now, you can't really be a raging alcoholic and run people's pensions or run businesses and that sort of thing. So it's not really the case. As much as people like to say it is. Anyway, I told you guys we're going to be jumping around in this article. Let's finish the Football London thing. Then we're going to get into the. I've been going too long already. I've got so much to get through. This might end up being like a 3-hour show, and then I'll slice it and dice it up for you later on to make it. I'll find a way to kind of make it all make sense. Anyway, where do we get to on this article? Forbes value Spurs at around 3.2 billion, but valuations of closer to 4 billion would probably be correct right now, given the sale value of other sporting assets that don't own their own stadium like Spurs do. This is scarcity. There is a scarcity value. Love scarcity value. Brilliant. Why Bitcoin does what it does. In top of a Premier League side coming up for sale. But the potential iceberg in the coming years of a decline in media rights, it's not going to happen in my opinion. Fueling a decline in the value of teams, not going to happen in my opinion. It would be a bold play for whoever took on the club. Well, it's a bold play for whoever took on the club because Daniel Levy will charge peak value, 100 pennies in the pound, for all of the low-hanging fruit of which he has already picked. There is very little in the way that new owners could come into Tottenham and repurpose with some incredible creativity the direction of travel with regards revenue generation. And so the risk is not that there's going to be a decline in media rights. I believe it's going to continue to drive up. I believe that the Netflix of sports will be the catalyst for that final ramp. If you are a crypto enthusiast, you call that crypto summer, the parabolic move, shall we call it, where everything goes mental. I think that is the kind of the big elephant in the room that can happen, should happen. I think there'll be many clubs that will benefit from it. And like I say, a 3x in terms of, but Daniel Levy will probably bake that in. He'll bake a part of that valuation, an unyet met additional value that's down the line. Daniel Levy will say, well, I'm not just going to hand over the club at this valuation when just around the corner there's going to be a 3x improvement. And that's where Daniel Levy, for me, misses the book. There's a phrase in stockbroking and in trading called leave some for the next guy, which means if you bought something at 10 pence or £10 or whatever, you bought a share at £10, then, and it goes to £20, then even if you think that it might go to £30 or £25, you're never going to pick the top. You're never going to pick the bottom, at least consistently. You might get lucky, but you won't be able to pick it via skill. And so you should probably sell to someone who you want to benefit from that relationship from in the future, because if you sell it to them and the first thing that happens is you pick the top, they bought at the top and they go and the stock for them falls to £5 or £15 or whatever, then he's not only going to have a bad taste in his mouth that he lost money, he's going to have a bad taste in his mouth because he bought it from you. Even though you're not responsible for his desire to buy the stock, you should take some off the table and leave some for the next guy, because he needs to make some money to be able to maintain his ability to buy from you in the future. So Daniel Levy, to me, is a brilliant businessman, a brilliant accountant. But when this notion that he is a brilliant negotiator gets banded around, then I think it's absolutely bonkers, because he doesn't see the wood for the trees with regards relationships that are cyclical, that are not transactional, and that are not one and dones. How many times have we heard in the media, the respected media, that Daniel Levy is someone that's burnt a lot of bridges because he sees things as a zero-sum game. He sees it as, in any negotiation, someone has to win and someone has to lose. And that's a fine way to negotiate if you are cutthroat and if you operate in an industry where your transaction is one-off with a customer. And therefore, they know the deal, you know the deal. It's a hard negotiation, and you have to fight for every inch in the battle. But you know that when it's done, one of you will reflect positively, one of you will reflect negatively, but you're never going to see that guy again in all likelihood. In football, there's not that many teams that Tottenham would want to be buying from, right? There's 19 in the Premier League, there's 24 in the Championship. You might dip down into League 1 or 2 for some kids. And there's probably, I don't know, 60, 70 teams around Europe that you're likely to deal with at some point. And if you burn all those bridges because you think that you have to get perfect value all the time, then you're gonna end up not getting that phone call at some point in the future. And so be nice to the guys on the way up, because you never know when you're going to need them on the way down, right? That's another adage that I think is often overlooked by Daniel Levy. There is a scarcity value, he says. While Enoch and Lewis and the Lewis Trust may be more willing to relinquish, it's hard to imagine Levy will want to hand over full control. Yada, yada, yada. Heard that before. It will be the Spurs chairman's approach in the summer market that will offer the strongest indication whether this is a club that is ready to have a for sale sign placed outside it, or one where the current owners decide to try and make the most of the strong financial position in which they find themselves and try to replicate what North London rivals Arsenal have done. Do you know what's really annoying about that? Is that if you actually look at the title, it's a story that you think is there some new information in there, but actually it's just an op-ed piece and regurgitating the same nonsense. So I'm almost apologetic that I wasted your time for half an hour looking through it, looking for something that was meaningful. Let's pivot to the thing that you're really here to hear about, which is the Money League 2023-2024. Let me pub in 72 minutes and counting, says JP, buy some XRP. And he missed that boat, mate. They were 50p back last year. Now they're £2.50 or something, aren't they? Or $2.50. Thank you very much again, Blaine, for the super chat, mate. Very, very generous of you, mate. I love you to pieces. Sean, was it Richard Rios or Maxence Kakare? That's it, Matthew Ball. That's the man. Maxence Kakare, exactly. Yeah, I said I think that there'll be a team that will come in. I don't even know what happened. Did he actually end up leaving? I'm not sure. But yeah, there's a lot of bargains that will be happening in the French league, and Daniel Levy sniffed a bargain, right? And that's what he gets himself into. Anyway, Money League stuff. There's so many takeaways from this, guys. I've already been going for 45 minutes. Like I say, batten down the hatches, guys. I think we could be here for a long time. I will slice and dice it up as best I can after the fact. Let's get over to the Money League story. Deloitte have published the 28th edition of the annual Football Money League, which ranks the clubs. The world's leading football clubs by revenue, this time covering the 2023-24 season. The Money League remains a benchmark report for the financial strength of football clubs, though Deloitte themselves note that there are many other metrics that could be used to compare clubs which are not covered by their analysis, such as profitability, player sales, and debt. Both very important, or all three very important when it comes to analysing Tottenham, which is why when people say Tottenham are the 8th most profitable football, or the 8th richest club in the world, therefore, ergo, I don't need to know anything else. That's enough for me to say, why aren't we paying huge wages? And Daniel Levy is the parasite, etc. It's just not. That's not the way the truth doesn't lie in that statement. The truth, that's just a summary that is applied to one set of metrics and one set of meaning and one set of analyses. It's not the only or even the best way to describe Tottenham Hotspur, especially when you have $800 million of debt. It's like saying, I live in £1 million house, therefore I'm rich. Well, maybe if you've paid the house off and you have no mortgage and you have, your liquid net wealth is in that number as well. But if you've just bought it with a 50 grand deposit and you're now on credit cards trying to fill those empty rooms, then you're not rich at all. You're stretched too thin and you're a donut for putting yourself in that position, because the economic environment can change very quickly and the interest rates on a £950 mortgage can be moved very, very quickly, as we saw yesterday, in the right direction for once. It's nice to see it come down. So I hope everyone that's got a mortgage it happens to be fortuitously timed to renegotiate and get a little bit of a better deal. But for those of you that just signed up at the very top, hard luck, I guess. Although they did not exactly boldly go where no man has gone before, the consultants did reveal that 23-24 unlocked a new frontier as Real Madrid became the first football club to record more than 1 billion euros in revenue. Top 20 revenue-generating clubs once again reported record money league revenue, as this increased by 649 million, so 6% average over the top 20, from 10.6 bill to 11.2 bill. This is all in euros, by the way. This was driven by new highs in both match day, up 11%, from 1.9 billion to 2.1 billion, and commercial up 10%, from 4.4 to 4.9. A lot of people, right? So this is the first takeaway, and you're going to see more and more of this as we go down here. It's not a massively, it's quite a big article, but it's not massive. I'm not going to go through every single nook and cranny of it with you. I'm going to get the tidbits here, but people think that the football club is the most important thing. The football success, and it is, right? To us fans, it is, of course. I don't care if Daniel Levy's driving a Ferrari or what when he's on a Sunday. What I do care about is the ability to understand that you don't have one without the other, and that commercial revenue is, for the top 10 teams, the most important, the biggest slice of the three categories of football revenue generation or football club revenue generation metrics. So when you hear about these sponsorship deals, Tottenham are the now proud sponsors of, whatever, Thatcher's cider, wish they would. I'd never leave the stadium. Those deals are all meaningful and contribute towards the top number, which then does get distributed into in a far more meaningful way than people think, into the ability to pay the wages, pay the salaries, pay the loan fees, pay the contracts off, pay the residuals on all of the deals, on the things that do matter on the pitch. Now, of course, there is a balance. There's a fine line between how much are you making here, how much of your attention is here, how much are you willing to step into that world and go, well, let's throw some caution to the wind and get ourselves in a situation where we can see some more success. What I have always maintained is that in order to get to knock on the door, you need to create a squad that is competitive, obviously, with the likes of Liverpool, the likes of Chelsea, the likes of City, the likes of Arsenal, the likes of Manchester United. Unfortunately, though, in order to do that, you only really have two paths to choose. You either go after the players that are already at those sorts of teams, either on their way down or by hook or by crook, by convincing them to come to a team, or you go after the best youth. But if you are a team that is not part of the 5 teams that have won 92% of all trophies in the Premier League over the last 25 years, then you don't have trophy wins as a sales pitch. Tottenham, as I said, tongue in cheek, do have the ability to pitch trophies. If you come to Tottenham, you are guaranteed to win a trophy. Just not at Tottenham. It will be the place that you go after Tottenham where you'll win a trophy, right? And that is unfortunately par for the course. But if you are trying to close the gap on the teams above us, look at the gulf last night, like in Liverpool's case. If you want to be able to close that gap, you have to shake hands with the fact that they were better and more competent and have more depth in every single place on the park, from goalkeeper to striker and everywhere in between. And so you have to go out and say, well, we need to go and improve on that level, right? Not only do you have to get a team together that wants to fight and act above themselves, and a manager that can put together the right words in the right sentence, in the right order, with the right outcomes to be able to get the motivations lifted as well. You also have to have a chairman that can go out there and buy those players. But every one of those players is also desired by somebody, either in the Premier League that is part of that big 5, or that is a team that wins a lot elsewhere in Europe. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to convince a player to come to Tottenham if they have an option to go to Chelsea or to City or to Liverpool or to Arsenal, because those guys have the draw of trophy success. It's a chicken and the egg. So how else can you compete? Well, I would make the argument that you compete by going after the best young talent. And I think that Tottenham have created and carved out a niche in the transfer market where it is a capable and competent sales pitch, where Tottenham can say, more so than many of the other teams in that top 5 bracket, to 17, 18, 19 and 20-year-olds who are coming up and who are supposed to be the next best thing. Look what happens at Tottenham. At Manchester City, we'll buy all of you up, and then you won't play for us in the most part. You'll get shipped out on loan. You'll get sent away to live abroad, and you will, in all likelihood, never play for Manchester City, but will be the recipient of your success because we gobbled you up early, thinking that you might hit it. And then if you do, then we'll still get 20% of your future sell-on values. But there's no loyalty there. There's no pathway to the Manchester City first team for the most part. It's a transaction. It's a commodity. You're treated like cattle. Prized cattle, maybe. Same thing's happening at Chelsea. Whereas at Tottenham, you have a very real ability to present an argument and a narrative. And look what happened against Elfsborg. And I genuinely do believe that the Elfsborg night is more meaningful than people give it credit for. Being able to present a story where 3 kids from the academy, one of whom has been sent out on loan, not abroad, not go away and make it, and then we'll just pick up the we'll cash in the register later on. But we want you to come back, but we need you to prove it at a certain level. And when those things fail for whatever reason, we don't give up on you. We don't turn our back on you. We'll bring you back into the team because of the circumstances in which we find ourselves in. And of course, that is part of the story as well. But then he goes and gets the first goal, a meaningful first goal against Elfsborg that gets us basically 1 foot into the last 8 or the last 16. And then, of course, you've got Micky Moore. That story, we managed to convince him to stay. He's not even 18 yet, so he can't sign professional contract where he gets his big payday and his family's payday. All of that stuff was Fabio Paratici's, presenting that narrative to Daniel Levy, and Daniel Levy bought in. But if you can't compete by going after the likes of, let's be honest, are you really going to go and get the guy from Napoli? Are you really going to convince Kvitschgaya to come to us? I don't think so. Are you really going to be able to convince Osimhen to come to us? I don't think so. He's going to have options elsewhere. Whenever Tottenham are interested in a top player, there's always another top team that's able to offer things that Tottenham can't, which is a periodic and consistent line of success. And that is back to the inability for the lawmakers to be able to set a certain and strict set of rules that do not have loopholes on a level as best you can playing field. There should always be a competitive imbalance to a degree, because that is, otherwise there's no incentive for success. A competitive imbalance is a part of the course of capitalism. If you don't have competitive imbalance, if you don't have consequences for success and consequences for failure, then you're basically living in a socialist system, right? And that shouldn't be part of the game, especially not in a world where you don't control the entirety of the sport. And Premier League doesn't. So you need this. But Tottenham have to go in a different direction, as do other clubs. Brighton and Brentford have all done that stuff. Aston Villa have done that as well. Newcastle moving into that direction, finding the best talent. Alex Isak wasn't the player he is now 2 years ago. Anthony Gordon. How many of you told me I was mental when I said that Anthony Gordon would be a top signing for Tottenham if we got him when he was at Everton? The only person I know in this community who knew anything about Bruno Guimaraes of any real level, a proper focus, was Jack Kinsky from the Irish Hotspur. Back when he was doing the flat cap Euro talk. Shout out to you, Jack. You were all over that Guimaraes when he was playing in Spain. Look what happened there. Sensational player. Joel Linton. Anyway, we move on. The top 20 revenue generating clubs once again reported Money League. We got to this part. As a result, commercial remained the most important revenue stream with 44%. So I said that already, right? So the most important part of revenue stream for the top 20 teams is commercial, which irritates the life out of so many people in the Tottenham fan base. But it's not just a Tottenham theme. This is a football theme. It's part of the two are married. They're meshed. It is what it is. You don't have one without the other. Sometimes you can have one and not have the other. It's very unlikely that you're going to have football success without the commercial stuff. Sometimes you can have the commercial stuff without the football success, which is what we are experiencing right now. But followed by broadcasting, 38%. This is the top 20 teams. So 82% of the club's ability to generate revenue is from things outside of fans. So when people say we're treated like a piece of shit by the owner, and that's not just a Daniel Levy theme and a Tottenham fan theme. If you're watching this on Sean Butler TV, by the way, get over there if you haven't already, smash a like, smash a subscribe, and also do the same thing on the Spurs Talk Show and on Twitter. But if you are sitting there thinking that your club treats you like shit, that you are a commodity, you are a piece of cattle, you are a paycheck and that's it, that's why. That's why. They care more about Sky or Optus or Premier or Peacock or whatever your country's thing is than they do about you going to the stadium. Obviously, the commercial number also includes merchandise, right? And that's why you, not the only reason, but that's also why people like Heung Min Son are incredibly valuable. I say cash cows, and people in the comment section take it as an insult. It's not an insult. It's just a financial term to suggest a money-making gold mine. Is what it is. Anyway, in sterling terms, the growth was more or less the same as the exchange rate against the Europe, only very slightly strengthened from 1.15 to 1.6, with total revenue also rising 6% from 9.1% to 9.6 billion. So, yeah, this is just pounds versus euros, right? Forget about that. We don't care. We'll just use euros for today's thing. Match day revenue increased by 11%. So this was once again the fastest growing revenue. So it's the fastest growing, but the least significant. This was comfortably a new record, being 38% higher than pre-pandemic peak of 1.5 billion. It's obviously 5 years ago now, or 4 years ago. The growth has been driven by a combination of stadium development. Okay, we're going to come to this. I'm going to pivot across from this in a minute because it's really important that you understand what the hell is going on in the real estate market, or in the kind of property game, if you like, with regards to stadiums. This is a global phenomenon whereby I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's like people were less likely to go out pissing it up against the wall on a Friday night. If you look at what's happening in London with regards, I think it's something like 11 or 12% of all bars and nightclubs and restaurants shut down in the last 12 months. I think I might be wrong about that stat, but something mad regarding Gen Z or whatever the young kids coming up. They just don't want to go out and get pissed anymore. They'd rather stay at home with their mates for most of the time. And then they'd rather go to arenas. They'd rather go to big events. There's a big shift in the way that people want to spend their disposable income. And it's moving towards event and ad hoc, one-off, individual moments that will live a lifetime in your memory, rather than the things that I did for the last 25 years, which don't live at all in my memory, because I used to say the best nights are the ones that you never remember. And that's not the way that the rest of the world thinks. And it's not just a UK thing. The same things are happening in New York. The same things are happening in LA. The same things are happening in Tokyo and in Australia, in Melbourne. If you're watching this from over there, it's probably late in the night for you. But these things are not localized phenomena. And who's taking advantage of it? Football clubs. So is Daniel Levy responsible for everyone waking up to this idea that you can build a stadium with the ability to put on events that are non-match day, but yet massively help generate the revenue streams? Or is he a participant in a trend that he happened to be in front of and that everybody else is reacting to as a consequence of the economic data that supports that narrative? Or was Daniel Levy the catalyst for other people going, Jesus Christ, look at Tottenham's revenues. It doesn't really even matter that much if they don't participate in Europe, because they've got so much coming in through go-karting and yada, 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 NFL. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The reality is that he is ahead of the curve, but that curve is going to become a right angle very soon, because as everybody else moves in that direction, the debt ratios are going to change. The infrastructure spend ratios are going to change. Who knows what's going to happen with the rules? The rules are already in flux because Aston Villa has joined the dissidents. I call them dissidents. I'm not really sure why I call them that, but just the people that are rejecting the majority the vote. And then all they need is one more. All they need is one more. And maybe Tottenham will get bought out by an oligarch. Maybe Tottenham will get bought out by a sheikh, rattle and roll, like the Sultan of Brunei, or the King of Kuwait. Someone, it's probably going to happen that Kuwait will move into a football team. And if they do move into the Premier League, then you can guarantee one thing, is that they will join the other side. And then all of a sudden, your ability to get 15 votes or 14 votes, game over. So then what happens? Then the rules stay as they are forever. So it's a race to the bottom. Do we get the rules in place before the ability to change the rules is forever dissipated? Or do the rules already look and feel in a way that is going to make enough people happy? Well, the only way the rules are going to make people happy is if you happen to have an owner that either is an accounting genius that can circumvent, or one that has got more money in the ground than exists in the entirety of that printed across mankind, such as what Newcastle have. And I don't hate Newcastle for doing it. I don't hate Aston Villa for doing it. They are all on their own game plan. And fair play to them. What I just find a little bit uncomfortable is the fact that you are if you have your eyes open and you have your ears to the ground, you can very obviously see a trend where it's you scratch my back, we'll scratch yours later when things are forgotten. And I think that to me is problematic. How are we doing in the chat? Have Becky Kane is spamming. Why are you spamming? Don't spam. I'll block you over. We are running on the bare bones here. Anyone wanting Postecoglou sacked must have the IQ of a chicken. Are you doing it too much though, Becky? No need to. Yeah, I don't know, Becky. I'm gonna put you on a timeout, mate. No more of that, please. It's annoying. I'll give you a second chance. I'll give you a second chance because I'm not that guy. But please, no more spamming. Is she doing it all the time? Is she doing it all the time? Is she? No, it's okay. Just no more, Becky. Any more, and I will. I'll have to kick you out. Let's get back to the story, guys. We've been going an hour and 6 minutes. Gee whiz. It's a long one today, guys. I got the Yahoo stuff to get through as well. Where's my page? Where's my page? What page was I on? The Deloitte one. Here we go. The Money League clubs also set a new record. Hang on, where's this thing? I want to pivot to now. I want to take this opportunity to pivot. Pivot. Where is it? Hang on, just give me a second here, people. I've lost my notes. Deloitte Stadium. Spend. Here we go. I want to pivot to this one. I've just been talking about the stadium thing, okay? Ambitious stadium projects aim to bridge public-private investment goals. Investments in sports infrastructure, such as stadiums, playing grounds, and training facilities, is seeing an upward trend as these developments often instigate broad social and economic returns to both public and private sectors. This is from 19th of November 2024, written by the brilliant Jennifer Haskell and Pete Giorgio et al. Really cool people, these guys, very smart guys. This trend has seen a renewed focus in recent years as sports teams in the regions such as North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific invest heavily in developing infrastructure with growth as a common goal. Governments and communities can work with sports investors to provide supplementary infrastructure, yada, yada, yada. In April 2024, Knighthead Capital Management, owners of now English Football League Club 1 Birmingham City, announced plans to create a sports quarter anchored around a new world-class stadium. There's one example. Two, furthermore, that's not it. Major League Baseball, Tampa Bay Rays signed a deal in July 2024 with the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. Obviously, a different set of rules whether they can use government spend over there. To build a new ballpark, the development group for the new stadium pledged to create 1,250 units of affordable housing. Again, infrastructure in England. That same stuff is happening. Daniel Levy did it already, right? For every skyscraper of Tottenham flats, 25% or 50% in some cases goes to social housing and to affordable housing, which is a good thing. But obviously, it's not where they make their money. They make their money in the private stuff that gets sold at the top end of the tower. The project leaders have reiterated their commitment to bridging the generational wealth gap in the surrounding communities, yada, yada, yada. The future of sport, 84% of global sports leaders surveyed said they expected different consumption preferences to be one of the most impactful next generation trends over the next 5 years. Sports organizations have balanced embracing the core traditions of a game day experience with generational Z and generational Alpha's heightened expectations of entertainment, which is what I just spoke about. That people don't want to go out and get drunk anymore. How dare they? How dare they ruin my fun? They want to go to big moments and big things. And that is the risk for Daniel Levy. That is the risk for Tottenham Hotspur. That is the risk when you look at a club that generates so much of their wealth from non-match day things. As I say, 18% is all that is contributed from match day sports across the top 20 teams, not just, let's go back to this one here for a second, not just the likes of Tottenham, but all of them. Commercial revenue, 4.8 billion. Here we go. Can you see this? 4.8 billion over the top 20 teams. If you didn't know who the top 20 teams were, by the way, let me oh, I'm on the wrong page here. Here we go. No, this isn't it. This isn't it either. Let me go back. Deloitte Money League. Here we go. Sorry. Share this tab instead. Bang. 11.2% revenue generated by the 2025 Money League clubs, 6% growth on revenue generated by the 2024 Money League clubs. If you wanted to know who was in the team, here we go, guys. Real Madrid, 1.45 billion euros. Manchester City, 838 million euros. Paris Saint-Germain, United, always getting their 700 million quid. They always can find 700 million quid, but they can't afford to pay for a Matisse Tell. Why? Well, spent too much, pay too much, and ultimately, it's not successful. It's not a successful method. Bayern Munich, 765, despite being 51% owned by the members of the public. Right. To be the fifth highest revenue generating team in football, and have 51% of your decisions to be approved by people that probably don't necessarily always understand what's in the best interest financially, you could make the argument that on that basis, why don't more teams have higher fan representation in the Premier League? Because this notion that they don't know what's good for the goose and they don't realize it can be good for the gander, that you could make that argument. Or you could make the argument that Bayern Munich could be at the likes of Real Madrid revenue if they didn't have to abide by the 51% tenure. Let me know in the comments what you think is more likely. If Bayern Munich, if other teams if the Bundesliga moved away from that model, and I think there's only 2 teams in the Bundesliga that don't have that model. I think Bayer Leverkusen is one. They're owned by the Bayer, the pharmaceutical company, and I'm not sure. Is it Berlin? UC Berlin. Apart from that, everyone else is on the 51% owned and operated by the fans, right? So I'm sure they have the best picked fans in terms of they're a member of the club, but they also happen to be on the board because they're smart and everything else. But ultimately, should you make the argument, depending on how you see, I see Brian Daigle in the comment section. I'm sure he would probably make the argument 51% ownership should be something that is incorporated across, because ultimately football is owned by the fans, right? And therefore it's a good argument. And I think that's fine. It's an absolute fine argument, but it would need to be concurrent. It would need to be cohesive. It would need to be sustainable across everyone. And in so doing, are you then leaving the door open for another league to take over that doesn't incorporate that and then become the giant, the Goliath of the footballing world in terms of eyeballs, attention, and where the money goes? And obviously we are competing as much as we are the most popular league in the world, probably because of the fact that there's private capitalization that funds the clubs rather than fan ownership. But could Germany be there? Possibly. Or could you make the argument that Bayern Munich and those teams that are, I mean, Borussia Dortmund here is the next one, 513 million. Have I got the right page up in front of you? I think I have. Red Bull. Red Bull are in charge of Leipzig. So yeah, I think you're probably right. Last night's 11 cost 235 million, according to Sky Sports, says Gary Becks. Sex. Would love some. You offering? Becky Kane, you're one of the low IQ. Okay. What's going on? Has she stopped? She stopped. No, I'm not that important to suffer that. All right. Not sure where we're at. I don't know how many people are still watching, guys. I can't see on the YouTube thing. We've got a couple of different channels going, so make sure you smash the like, smash the subscribe if you enjoy this sort of conversation. It hasn't really gone the way I thought it would be. There's a lot of jumping around. I apologize about that. Let's get back to the article. Manchester City remained the highest revenue-generating English club with 838 million. The gap between the two Money League clubs in 2023-24 was 208 million, the highest on record. Previous record, 84 million in 2018-2019. The gap between the top two Money League earning clubs is 208 million. Wowzers. And that is because Real Madrid moved into their new stadium. It's also why, let me shoot forward. Let me shoot down here. I'll come to Tottenham and Aston Villa and stuff in a second. These are the other 10. So that's the top 20, right? Madrid, City, Paris, United, Bayern, Barcelona, Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea, Dortmund, Madrid, Atletico, AC Milan, Inter Milan, Newcastle, Juve, West Ham. For them, how do they get on there? Thousands. Aston Villa. This is such an interesting one, right? 310 million, up 27%, up 66 million. So they were at 250 odd million, give or take 244 million last year in euros. And yet they have a wage bill of about 300 million euros. And they've just taken on Marcus Rashford's 275 grand a week they're paying that guy. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane, right? But look at that. This is broadcasting revenue. So if you're looking at Aston Villa and you're wondering whether or not they are going to be a juggernaut going forward, when you compare, look at the ratios here. So yellow is commercial, right? They only make 43 million euros a year from commercial. Compare that to Tottenham Hotspur, who make 297 million euros from commercial. 195 million for broadcasting. We're outside of obviously Europe for the second season running. You go back to Aston Villa, and they make 215. So the difference is you basically get the same sort of amount, give or take, from the Premier League, give or take a few million here, depending on the eyeballs and the attention, as I've already described. But you also will get some more for being in the Champions League in the broadcasting rights. And then match day, only 52 million. Versus Tottenham, 123, because of the fact is our stadium significantly bigger? Yeah, it's 50% bigger, but obviously the amount of money that we bring in from all of those things, from the beer stands and the burgers and the sausages and all that stuff, the fact that people stay in the stadium for a couple of hours afterwards. Whereas Aston Villa Park is a lovely stadium, it's a really nice slanted like stand, so you can always get a perfect view of the ground of the match, but it doesn't have any of that kind of new age experience. And as I say, the shift, the trend, the next generation that are coming through, all of these people want to go places and have a good time. And if the football isn't great, then there's not much else to be excited about. Now, Aston Villa are very fortuitous in that the football is very good over there at the moment. However, how long does that last? Well, we've seen with Tottenham, it can be a fleeting thing. You can be there or thereabouts knocking on the door for 20 years, for 15 years. And then all of a sudden you could be languishing at the bottom of the table. It was only a couple of years ago that Aston Villa were in the Championship. They have new owners that have come in, that have backed their club financially to the tune where they are in a problem with regards the net spend and the squad spend. They can't be at 96% forever. Their 3-year ratio rule being in the Europa League, their success is possibly and probably going to be a problem for them. That's the weird thing about football is sometimes, in the case of Tottenham, for example, we are going to be outside of Europe for the last 2 years, so we don't have to adhere to the 70% squad cost ratio. Now, when you look at our revenues, it's 42%, I think, at the moment, but it's probably after this January window going to rise to about 46%. But ultimately, because this is the final year before we move to this 6 times or 5 times the multiple of the lowest revenue generating football club, and the 70% threshold of your squad cost ratios only counts if you're in Europe, and Tottenham aren't in Europe, but Aston Villa are, then Aston Villa have a massive headache coming to be able to find a way to increase their revenue. And they won't do it through match day. They won't do it through commercial because they don't have the same draw that the stadium at Tottenham Hotspur does. They are, as I showed you earlier, it's minuscule. Less than £100 million comes from commercial or match day. For them, they rely entirely on broadcast revenue, and it's not enough to be able to get that down because the broadcast revenue doesn't materially change. It's not going to, there's nothing that Aston Villa can do this year that is going to materially impact their broadcast revenue. The areas where they can improve is commercial and match day, but they are already maxing out their match day because they are participating in the Champions League. They are participating in as many games as they can. And if they do get past us in the FA Cup, they might squeeze a couple more million out. But it's not going to make a massive difference. Whereby if you're spending £300 million, give or take, on your squad spend, on your squad, your wages, and that's at 96%, and you need to get that down to 70%, let's just make that, or sorry, 98%. Let's just call that around 25%. Then 25% of 300 million is 75 million euros. So they need to find a reduction in their wages of 75 million euros. How are you going to do that? Unless you have some way of utilizing relationships with areas and forces that are outside of the jurisdiction of UEFA, and the Premier League, which is why I believe that they moved into that world of the 5 teams that were deciding to reject the Premier League rules around squad cost ratios. And there doesn't seem to be any panic about that. There doesn't seem to be any panic at all. Here's the other 31 teams, from 20 to 30 rather. Here we go, Flamengo. That's the team, right? The Brazilian team is the first time a Brazilian team has made it into the top 30 of the world's richest or highest revenue teams, the Super League, if you like, the Money League. The first time since 1978, I believe it is. A massive shift is taking place with regards money into football. It's also because of the loosening restrictions around getting passports, and that players can come straight from Brazil or South American teams, generally Argentina, et al. They can all move straight into the Premier League at least 5 times a season. I think it is per club. So all of the best players now don't have to go to Spain or Portugal first. They can come to the Premier League where the real money is. And that is a good thing for them. It's a good thing for the Premier League. It's also a bad thing for Spain and Portugal because they have benefited massively. You look at the likes of Benfica. Benfica had a €1 billion surplus in their net trading assets over the last 10 years, up until I think it was the summer before last, the last time they released that number, that was in no small part catapulted as a catalyst because of their ability to bring players in from South America, ingratiate them, acclimate them into Europe, and then when they hit the ground running, then a bigger club comes in and buys them. And that's going to be a problem for those teams that rely in those parts of the world on that transition, that traditional transition from the talent in South America who pay nothing for the players, obviously, initially. And then the Spanish and Portuguese teams buy them for pennies in the pound. They develop them. They become superstars, not all of them, but many of them. And then a team like Manchester City, a team like, Chelsea, a team like Juve, Real Madrid, etc., will then buy those players up and pay the big bucks. Doesn't need to happen anymore. And as a consequence, you're seeing the Flamengos of this world. And I think that for what it's worth, Corinthians are not far behind. I think they're like 37th, 38th. I think that Fluminense is on that list. And I think also Vasco da Gama is too. So it's a common theme and something you'll be learning a bit more about if you're interested in this stuff on Sean Butler TV. So smash a like and subscribe if you're over there. What did we get to? According to the Deloitte analysis, over 300 sports stadium projects, renovations, or new build. In fact, before I get into that, let me just pause and see where we are up to on the on comments. Sue Smith, some mods will be useful here. What's going on? Where's their arguments? Where's the arguments? Let me know. Is anyone being a donut? I trust you guys. Let me know. Is anyone being a donut? Who needs to go? So tell you what, Sue. I'll make you a. Actually, I don't even know how to. I don't think I can do it. Matthew Bell, is he being? Oh no, he's not being a donut. Not sure. There it is. Internet Spurs saying everything as fact whilst not knowing if it's fact at all. Who said they all said no? What's going on? Is there arguments happening in my chat whilst I'm looking at my screen? Whilst I'm looking at an article? I don't know what's going on. Time to make the donuts. Yep. Somewhat. Phil, can I make? How do I make you a? Can I make people moderators? Can I do it from? Not sure if I can do it from. I'll tell you what I can do. I can go to YouTube, can't I? Go to YouTube, get into my own channel, and then from there, give me a second. Phil P, you are now You're already a moderator. You're a moderator. You can be a managing moderator. How about that? Who else wants to be a moderator? Adam William Khan. Adam William Cahill. You're a moderator. Let me know if I need to check. I don't know. I can barely see the comments, man. I'm looking through the articles. If there's people need to be moderators, who else isn't a moderator? Smash the like by the way, guys. Smash the like. You know what, Tony? I'll make you a moderator. Well, you're a good guy, mate. You're a good guy. You're a moderator as well. There you go. If people are being donuts, then donut away. Mods assemble. There you go, Phil. Right. Let me get back to it. There's 400 and so people on Spurs Talk Show. There's 716 people, give or take, across the board here. So smash the subscribe, smash the like, all that stuff. Where was I? Okay, let's have a look. See. Additionally, the big 5 European leagues are entering a period of stability in domestic broadcast income, and only the Premier League and La Liga are expected to deliver civic. There you go. So, whilst the guy on Football London said that the broadcast revenue is at risk, if you're a Tottenham, if you're Daniel Levy, I don't think it is, and Deloitte don't think it is either. The Premier League and the Liga are expected to deliver significant uplifts through international rights. That's the thing, right? Those deals are up for renegotiation very soon. With regards Setanta, I think it is, or not Setanta, who's the Middle Eastern conglomerate that does it? I forget the name. Anyway, therefore, the next material uplift could come from an increase in the number of matches played by clubs via the introduction of a new format to existing competitions. This can be expected on account of changes made to the UEFA competitions from the 24-25 season and the expanded FIFA World Cup between between June and July of 2025. Again, as Johan Lang intimated, right, the additional games in the Europa League and the Champions League has had a massive impact on the ability to spend money because clubs didn't want to lose their best players whilst their position in the top 8 was under threat. And that didn't happen. It didn't finish until right at the very end, which is why I am a massive advocate for stripping back the rules around the January transfer window. Either move that stuff back, move the whole season back, start the season a couple of weeks earlier, or move the European games so that even if you're doing these extra games, you finish by December the 31st so that you have the entirety of the January window knowing where you sit in regards the top 8. Obviously, you've still got that round of 32 you have to go through, which is going to affect 16 clubs in both competitions. But on top of that, there's just I think it's ridiculous to try and squeeze everything into 31 days when it's a Mexican standoff. No one wants to shoot first, right? Everyone's doing this like in that film, The Anchorman, right? Everyone's looking around like, what's going on? And it creates a massive bottleneck. So either just let the window just stay open. Why not just go back to the days when it used to just be open the whole time? Much better, right? Deals can just happen when they happen. Or if it has to be because of human employment law rules, which I think is ridiculous, but if that's the case, then at least expand it into a 2-month window because it's literally stupid. December the 1st, the window should open, and then January the 31st, it can close. Maybe it would still create the bottleneck. Maybe still nothing would happen until January the 30th for most teams. But for me, it's a laughing stock. For what it's worth, though, player welfare, and according to this, it's still a big deal. Player welfare is still very important because the players are getting asked to play too much. So on that basis, then expand the squad, right? Stop making it be 23, 24-man, 25-man squad. Make it be 30-man squad. Allow more to happen. But is that going to benefit just the top few that have got the money? Well, you would expect so, except for the fact that in 26-27 season, the 25-26 season, the rules are going to change and move away from the traditional method of 70% squad cap ratios into a method of you can only spend 5 times what the lowest revenue team makes, irrespective of how much money you make. And that to me is it's a good way of leveling the playing field, but it still also encourages a situation whereby most teams that can afford will not be allowed to. So what is the purpose of the rules? Is the purpose of the rules to lower to level the playing field, or is the purpose of the rules around sustainability, which is based around the concept of don't overspend, because in the 90s and the noughties, most teams spent too much money and too many teams went bankrupt, and it's too important of a hobby, an outlay, a distraction for people that struggle in life to lose the club of their boyhood support because of the financial mismanagement, which echoes back to the question around Nottingham Forest. Fucking hell, do I go on a weave? Nottingham Forest, who got a 4 points deduction, essentially because they waited 3 weeks to get a deal done with Tottenham that earned them £18 million more than what they were going to get from Brentford for Brennan Johnson. And their argument, which I think is an absolutely reasonable one, is how are you docking us points for being against sustainability rules when the reason we did what we did was because £18 million, I think it was £18 million, £18 million difference is what we achieved by waiting 3 weeks. So you're saying that we should have, in order to adhere to your rules, we should have accepted an £18 million lower bid for Brennan Johnson from Brentford in order to not get your 4 point deduction. And you know what? It just so happened that Nottingham Forest didn't get relegated anyway, but 4 points has been very often the difference between staying up and going down for a team in Nottingham Forest position. And then they have to make the argument, well, we get £18 million, but we take a 4 point deduction, but in so doing, we lose, what is it, £100 million over 3 years in not being in the Premier League. And even then, when you go down, if you then come straight back up again, you're not privy to the same rules around how much money you're allowed to lose as the teams that have been in the Premier League for the past 3 years. Look at Leicester, who just got away with an FFP and PSR charge by using the own rules that the Premier League made against them in the appellate court. It's ridiculous, people. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. Let me know. Yeah, but Nottingham Forest didn't know what the deal was certain to complete. True. But my point is, what is the point of the rules? Right? Is the rules here to make sure that people are sustainable, or is the rule here to make sure that it's a level playing field? If it's about level playing field, then I'm all for it. If it's about sustainability, then the rules need to have context, but you can't have rules that have context. You have to have a line in the sand. Otherwise, context is always personal. Context is always subjective. And so it's just an absolute nightmare. I don't know if I'm boring you to tears, guys. I've got no idea. I've got to pivot away from this for a second. Actually, have I done everything on this particular story? And let me get rid of that one. I've got to show you. There's so much more I need to show you, and I've already been going for an hour and a half. Did I see your message, Danny? Where did you send me a message? I don't even know where you sent me a message, mate. Let me know where you sent me a message. Rainman, this is right up your street. Okay, cool. Well, we'll carry on then. This is what we do. Any club could claim a huge deal in the future to avoid current rules. But they got the deal done. And it was only after the fact that the rules are then implemented. If they didn't get the deal done, then they're rightly screwed, right? They're screwed anyway because they didn't get the money in, and they would have been screwed because they needed that sale to make the numbers work. So if the deal fell through after the fact, then they would have been screwed anyway. But the auditing of the accounts only happens after the deal was done. So it's not quite strictly true what you're saying there, Patrick. How can you get in contact with me, brother? Not sure I have your new number. I'm not going to give it out on here, mate. I will. How do I do this? I'm going to be back on WhatsApp very soon. If the number ends in 849, then you have my new number. It's probably in a group somewhere. Go into the WhatsApp group for We Are Tottenham TV, and you'll see my number in there, even though I'm not currently active because I've been kicked out of WhatsApp with iCloud because of shenanigans. But I'll be back in WhatsApp in a couple of days. Anyway, is this a lecture on how to justify why Spurs should always now downgrade decades-long heritage and ambitions? Moving on, the headline refers to an incoming takeover. What's the story? Well, there wasn't actually a story, mate. I thought there was a story. But actually, it was just Football London doing an op-ed, I guess, a bit like this. That's my fault. I'll change the headline after the fact. Is this a lecture to how to justify why Spurs should always now downgrade decade? It's not a lecture. It's not a lecture. If you want to see it as a lecture, you can see it. I'm just going through the detail, my man. Yeah, but listen, if you are someone that is already made up your mind, then this channel isn't for you. This channel is not an echo chamber. I do my best to chew through the various context of whatever's going on, and I think that there is a massive slice of misinformation that is presented around the houses in certain areas of the community that tell you that up is down and down is up. You know, as we saw last week, right? There are people that moved because the populist movement right now is to lean towards Levy out. You have the Johnny come latelys that are pivoted that way, and then you have the ever-present people like yourself, international observer. I'm not guessing. I do know you are a staunch Levy outer. I don't know if you are particularly someone who happens to persist with the theme that I saw last week, but that losing to Liverpool is a good thing because winning a trophy is a bad thing for the Levy out movement, even though the Levy out movement is predicated and founded on the principle that Tottenham don't win enough trophies. And to extend that rationale, that ridiculous rationale even further, relegation is a good thing because then Daniel Levy has absolutely nowhere to go. His team, his club will make no money and he'll be forced to sell at pennies in the pound, yada, yada, yada. It's absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But what's wildly weirder than the nonsense that narrative actually exculpates is the notion that is what is more important. That Levy leaving is more important than anything else. And it's just insanity. The lunatics have taken over the asylum in some areas. And like I say, you know, I'm the only channel that seems to advocate for balance because there's always a different side of context, and the facts and the figures stand up and stack up to having a slightly nuanced perspective. You can still land on the idea that Daniel Levy, it's an important little subcategory here. You can still land for what it's worth. I have absolutely no issue with anybody that lands on the notion that Daniel Levy has taken us as far as he can. There's absolute merit. Whether it's right or wrong, it's irrelevant. On a subjective level, there's absolute merit to the notion that Daniel Levy has done, insert adjective here, very well, appallingly, whatever, but he has taken us from here to here, a club that's valued from that here to here, and that we have been knocking on the door of the elite for the better part of like 15 years. And then in the last 5 years, since the new stadium that was promised to be a game changer, and as I say 1,000 times, and the facts just stand up to any kind of audit, it has been financially, and it has transitioned into a game changer in our net spend ratios. At the same time, those same facts and figures will absolutely adhere to the notion that we have moved backwards as a football club since 2019. So whilst the game changer did occur, it's also been a negative game changer for Tottenham, but not because of the stadium directly, but because, in my opinion, of the moving target, the moving pieces that are football. Right? There's 20 clubs that are doing things, 19 other clubs in the Premier League, maybe 5 or 6 that pop up and pop down from the Championship, European teams, and all of that stuff. They are all doing their own thing. The variables that influence the success or failure of any football club are massively more counted, massively more in number outside of the direct control of what's happening at your club than they are within your control. People like Aston Villa, teams like Newcastle, they are Johnny-come-latelys to the story, to the platform, and they may kick on, they may open that door and put their foot in it and get through. They may not. They probably won't. My argument has always been that on the basis of the benefit of the doubt, that if you are someone who subscribes to the idea that anyone but Daniel Levy will do, then you are someone that, to me, is going to figure out very soon, if you were to have your way, that it's far more likely that you will have a worse chairman than a better chairman. That doesn't mean that there's not better chairmen out there, and I would love to find them with you. I would love to identify them. That's what I do. I spend my time trying to figure these things out, sometimes in front of you guys, other times not so much, but I try to figure these things out. And I just don't subscribe to this notion that anyone but Daniel Levy will do. And anyone that does, for me, I think you're insane. I think you are. If you're someone that subscribes to the notion that, given all of the things that are in front of us, given all of the context, given all of the data, given all of the things that we show and talk about, and all the things that other channels talk about, if you land on this notion that Daniel Levy has taken us as far as he can to get into that elite, and at this stage you want to see someone who is better equipped at bridging the gap between where we are and where we want to be, that final hurdle. I know that this season's been a massive, but let's presume that we're back in the 5th, 6th, 7th category like we have been for the last 15th year, or 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th category like we are for the last 15 years. Then I'm okay with people that land on the notion that Daniel Levy's taken us as far as he can. He's been a good chairman in some regards, a bad chairman on others, and of which I think that's a very reasonable and fair and balanced synopsis. But that's different to people that say anyone but him will do. So if you are someone that says I'm up for something new now because nothing's going to change, and I'll even roll the dice at the risk of it being worse, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I think a lot of people that I'm very, very close with feel that way. And that's absolutely fine. And I don't even think that that's a wrong way of thinking. I'm very happy to see Daniel Levy move. I just need to know what the solution is. Levy out is not the solution. It's the problem. Levy's the problem in your mind, right? He's not the problem in mine, but he's the problem in yours. But the solution isn't Levy out. You have to find someone in. You have to get someone in. And it's to those of you that are watching this, you might not have the time, the inclination, the interest, or the resources to go and figure out in your little black book where the billionaires sit and whether or not they have the right balance of wealth, resources, ambition, business acumen, and everything else that it takes to be a clever chairman. But those of you that spend all day long talking about Levy out, 99% of your content is Levy out based. I don't think it's that hard to put in a little bit of work to find a list of people that you think would be better. I've done it. I even presented 3 names for you about 3 weeks ago, right? You know, and Google is a ridiculously brilliant resource where you can find people that have, because what you're looking for are people that obviously have obscene wealth, an entity, a person, a people, a family, whatever. You're looking for people that have interest in football. You're looking for people that know how to milk the cow. You're looking for people that know how to take what is almost already a ready to go, like a show home essentially. It's not a fixer upper. Tottenham's not a fixer upper, is it? It's a show home, right? Then it's ready to be sold. And you need to find someone that ideally is also a fan of the football club, that understands the ambitions of the fans, that can marry up the two. And when you look at the valuation of Tottenham Hotspur, it's far easier to filter people out than it is to filter people in, because you can essentially filter out 99.99% of people, persons, entities or organizations or families that are viable, because not many people can afford or would be willing to pay £4 billion. So you start by getting rid of all them and you find the people that can. And you go, okay, well, how many of them have got history in at least sports investments, but hopefully football investments? So you filter out probably half of those billionaires, maybe 70, then 90% of those billionaires. How many of them have an interest in buying a football club? We'll do some Google researches. You can find them. So you filter out another 90% of what's left. Then what's left of that? How many of them don't already have investments in Tottenham, in the Premier League or in European teams that would be a conflict of interest? Another 90% gone, chonk. How many of them that are left are not already conflicted by their royal family connections or whatever else? Chonk, slice. It's very easy to filter it down. But where are the solutions? If there were them, I would be all about it. I've given a couple of names of people that I think are good, but you know what? You look at Sir Jim Ratcliffe and you look at the private equity, the people that are going around and buying up these places, they are cost cutting. They are not people that are going to come in and throw good money after bad. They're people that are coming in looking for ways to get their pennies in the pound back. Inches, incremental gains. It's what matters to these people, because when you extrapolate that out onto a multi-billion-dollar and a several $100 million revenue stream per annum, those little tiny incremental inches add up to percentage points in their ROI. It's very difficult to find a solution that makes sense. So this notion that anyone but Daniel Levy will do is absolutely insane, as are the people that would wish for relegation to increase that likelihood, and or the people who would want Tottenham to lose to Liverpool because it increases the pressure on Daniel Levy. You're missing the wood for the trees, and you've forgotten what you started out your whole mission for. It's bonkers. Anyway, why did you suggest my name? Kim Heldson. Not sure. Well, there you go. If you're that wealthy, mate, you throw in a super chat. Anyway, where did we get to? You know what? How long have I been going for? Maybe this is something I better slice over 2 videos. Let's get back to the thing here, because there's more juice in here. There's more juice. There's a need to balance revenue optimization with player welfare, as many stakeholders acknowledge the impact of increased workloads. Clubs such as Madrid City, Flamengo, who are participating in the FIFA World Cup in 2025, could have potentially played 68, 74, and 87 matches. Flamengo might have to play 87 matches in the 24-25 season. Wowzers! I had no idea. That's insane. You'd hope that they have different squad level rules, right? In October 2024, FIFA Pro Europe filed a formal complaint to the European Union over the international match calendar. Should the challenges not be resolved, there exists a financial risk if the union votes to implement a strike during the football season. In addition, the need to manage workload is critical to providing the best on-pitch quality and the entertainment that fans, broadcasters, sponsors, and investors all crave. The inability to resolve this key challenge will damage the value of the sport in all senses in the long term. So I just wanted to kind of pivot back to these lists, right? It's interesting to get a kind of a scrape here. So West Ham United have popped up, done very well in terms of, obviously they got into the the Conference League final and won it. So they maximized the revenue that was available from the bottom tier of European football. But as Tottenham know, when we were in there that year before, we only made 8 million euros of revenue from the European competition, and we got kicked out of the group stages. So you could probably extend it. Maybe West Ham made £20 million in prize money and in match day receipts additional to their revenue. But they're hanging around like 301 million 2022, 275, then 322. So a record year for them. And again, you can look at the difference, right? Match day revenues at West Ham versus match day revenues at Aston Villa, very similar. 52 million versus 52 million. In fact, exactly the same. Now, West Ham Stadium is now played in a 60,000 seater stadium that is basically not half empty, but it's not. Is it 60,000 or 55,000, whatever it is in the stadium there? The one that you need to take binoculars to. 195 million and 215 million from broadcasting. Obviously, Champions League gets more of a slice there, but that's basically the difference there. And obviously, West Ham do a little bit worse than Aston Villa in the league, and so they're going to be on Aston Villa more often on Sky. So that's the kind of gulf there: 195 versus 215 versus 195. But as you can see, right, these numbers are not going to move meaningfully, and yet it's this commercial number that is the big elephant in the room. So if you want Tottenham to be able, again, I will say this 1,000 times, it doesn't matter who the owner is. I would be saying this if we were owned by a shake, rattle, and roll as well. If you want Tottenham to be able to spend the money to be able to compete with the Liverpools and everything else, then you should never, ever, ever throw him under the bus for this. Because that and this is the difference. We get more than twice as much match day revenue from things like selling burgers and beers in a stadium that encourages people to be there early and leave late and has a really nice environment for most things. And then this is where the vast majority of you are not really contributing. The vast majority of you, maybe if you buy a shirt, right, that's it. But the vast majority of this is coming from the NFL, the rugby league, from the stadium, the concerts, the Formula One, from the hand soap partnerships to the Thatcher's cider partnerships to whatever else. And this is the difference. That bit there, the 297, is the difference. This is the same, give or take. Media, it's the same. And then this is the money we're spending at the stadium when we go, but it's also the money that is, you're going to be spending it somewhere, right? If you're going out for Tottenham, for a Tottenham game, and you happen to want to be there a couple of hours early, you're either going to spend it in the pubs around Tottenham or you're going to spend it in Tottenham Stadium. That's the difference. So those of you that call Daniel Levy out for having his distractions, it's those distractions that allow us to be able to compete with Manchester United for Matisse Tell. It's those distractions that allow us to be able to waste 60 million on Richalison. It's those distractions that allow you to spend 45 million or whatever it was on Brennan Johnson. You know, and I don't believe, fundamentally, I do not believe that Daniel Levy is the guy who is identifying Brennan Johnson as the right winger. I don't believe he's the guy that's identified Richarlison. The only person that you know that he had some level of identifying was because of a tip-off that he was given around Jed Spence. And let's be entirely honest, it might have taken 3 years to materialise, but he was right. He was right about Jed Spence. The guy's an absolute class act. So look, you know, you might see this as a lecture, International Observer. It's not a lecture. It's the breakdown of some of the facts and stats so that you get a better understanding of where we sit versus the likes of West Ham and Aston Villa, the teams that we're somewhat in the dynamic competition for. And these are the teams we're trying to breach, right? Liverpool, 343 million from commercial endeavours. They get more money from shirt sponsors and they get more money from various other endeavours without having that kind of Anfield being used as a concert arena because of their success. But Tottenham don't have that success, which is, I know, is part of the problem, but it's a chicken and the egg. Money is the bridge builder between failure and success if you spend it right. But if you don't have the success first, then you need to find other avenues to get the money. It's cyclical. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be an economist or an investment banker to get your head around it. I don't understand why more fans can't shake hands with the truth around why it is we do things in the order that we do it. And when you have piss poor decision making around who to buy and when to buy it and how much to pay for it, that I think is obviously, if you subscribe to the notion that the buck stops at the top and Daniel Levy is responsible for everything that happens beneath the club, then fine. He's definitely responsible for hiring and firing of directors of football. He's definitely responsible for hanging on to some of them for too long. And he's definitely responsible for a lot of those factors, a lot of those incremental, indirectly responsible, but not necessarily clear, quite opaque rationales as to why we are where we are. But if you are someone that leans into that argument, the buck stops at the top, then you're essentially absconding everybody beneath him for any responsibility in why we are where we are. And I think in a multifaceted organization that deals with 100 different things, it's incredibly harsh to sit there and absolve everybody beneath the CEO for any responsibility. I took Bugsy to the vet the other day, right? She's got a bad tooth, bad ear, all that stuff. There was my first experience at a new vet. They misquoted the price. They charged us too much. They didn't apply a discount. They forgot our secondary appointment. We asked when she had to get something out of her ear, said, "Can we please see what it was?" The nurse said, "Oh, sorry, the dog kicked it on the floor," and then we hoovered it up. I said, "Well, we specifically asked to see it. Otherwise, we haven't got any evidence of what you've actually done, and my dog's still ill." And long story short, there's 9 or 10 different rationales as to, or things that happened as to why we had a terrible first experience with this vet. And the nurse and the receptionist dismissed every one of them as, "Oh, well, these things happen. Roll your eyes that you're getting pissed off. Sorry, I've just paid you £1,300 of my hard-earned money, and you couldn't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, or I correctly. And you want me to give you you're asking me for a 5-star review, by the way." And they said, "If you don't like it, speak to the boss." The boss wasn't there. The boss has nothing to do with those. Like, I don't believe that they're a bad business. I believe that they have bad people in charge who can't do the I's and T's of a simple procedure and a simple administrative task. Do I hold the boss accountable for their eye rolling? No, I hold them responsible. And I think that we should be doing that with regards to players for the effort yesterday. I think we should do that with Ange or the physical team, the medical team, for why we can't get a team together that's fit and keep them fit. And I think we should be holding Johan Lang and Paratici and everybody else, all of them in the past, responsible for their ability or inability to put together a correct spend analysis, whereby we can sit there and say, well, what the hell? Why did we spend that much money on Richarlison? Every one of you knows now, and most of you knew at the time, that Richarlison's a big waste of money. Most of you thought Brennan Johnson was a big. If you watch football, you know what you're getting, right? We're not idiots, are we? We're not just like dumb observers of the game. We are students of the game. It's not just these people that sit there and go, you just don't understand why Johan Langer bought this player or why Fabio Paratici bought that player. You don't understand it because you're just dumb customers. No, we all watched the game, and we all know that Brennan Johnson wasn't £50 million worth of talent. We all know that Richarlison was never £60 million worth of talent. So there should be accountability, and you should hold Daniel Levy accountable for the things that he's responsible for. But identifying Tanguy and Ndombele as a £60 million talent is not one of them. Being fooled into being convinced that he's worth that money is probably something on that list. That's why I feel the way that I do, and that's why I'll never get on board people who on the page of people who feel vehemently opposite, that Daniel Levy is the root cause of all issues at the club. I just do not see it, and I think that that there's far worse chairmen out there. There's evidence of it, very real, very true evidence coming up. Guys, I've been going for nearly I have been going for 2 hours. I've got one other story I want to show you, right, which is this PFA suing Premier League. Let me just get it up for you. Pause. We're going to move away from the Deloitte thing. But by the way, there's so much more I could be going through. So very much more I could be going through. And I wanted to show you some of that on another show. But Sean Butler TV is where you can find it. Let me pivot this across. How do I get the share screen? So we've spoken a lot today about lawmakers, right? Their inability to get things done. The PFA, the Professional Football Association, issue legal threat to the Premier League amid fears. Is it up on the screen? No, wait, up on the screen. Sorry. Here we go. The PFA issue legal threat to the Premier League amid fears that clubs could vote on the introduction of a salary cap from the 2025-26 season. This is from today, I think. Is it from today? Yeah, February the 7th. The Professional Football Association has reportedly threatened the Premier League with illegal action in an attempt to block the potential introduction of a salary cap. Premier League clubs voted last year to explore the introduction of a spending cap from the start of the 2025-26 season as part of a new financial system, financial controls to replace profit and sustainability rules. The new system known as anchoring, which would limit the club's spending on transfers, wages and agents' fees. The precise ratio is yet to be determined, but the new rules are expected to anchor spending to around 5 times the income of the bottom club. We've spoken about this for most of the day. Sheffield United earned £110 million for finishing bottom last season, meaning the top spenders would have been limited to £550 million. A total of 16 clubs voted in favour of exploring anchoring last year, with City, United, Villa voting against and Chelsea abstaining. Again, spoken about that all day long. What's Aston Villa's motivation to do that? When you look at their finances, you look at their ability to generate revenue from certain areas, it doesn't really add up until you start to see the fact that John Duran goes to Saudi Arabia as a young super talented kid. If he doesn't come back in 18 months or 2 years to the Premier League or to a similar level standard, absent his career just falling off the cliff, I'll probably shut down the channel. But I'm so certain that this is all a shenanigan. To you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours later. According to The Athletic, the PFA has written to the Premier League warning of potential league action with the system limiting clubs spending on player wages, regardless of whether they can meet the costs. The report states that the PFA have claimed the Premier League has yet to explain why it wants to bring in anchoring or provide details of how it would work. First and foremost, PFA, like with all due respect, that's the whole purpose of the Premier League. They don't need your permission. They don't need your agreement. They vote And I think this is a weakness of the system because, as I say, I think it's being manipulated right now by teams that have behind the scenes got relationships where the left hand and the right hand are very much in cahoots. I think that's a threat and it's a risk, but they all signed up to it when it started in 1991. You don't need permission. You don't need the approval or the acknowledgement of these third-party assets. They're part of the story, but they're not ultimately the decision makers. And so I don't know, unless I'm mistaken, I don't, and maybe the article will go on to say this, but I don't believe the PFA have got any legal jurisdiction in this matter whatsoever. It's just it's the Players Football Association, right? The Players Football Association. Is that right? Or the professional players? Rule changing impacting player contracts are typically agreed by the Professional Footballing Negotiation and Consultative Committee, the PFNCC. The committee includes the PFA, the Premier League, the English Football League, and the League Managers Association. The PFA legal threat reportedly comes with the organisation concerned. The Premier League shareholders were set to vote on proposals at their meeting next week. The Premier League has confirmed it has received legal demands from the PFA over the potential rules, with letters also sent to the 20 clubs. We have complied with PFNCC requirements. We've complied with PFNCC requirements, and the PFA has had multiple opportunities since March 2024 to provide feedback on the rules and the principles that underpin them, a Premier League spokesman told The Athletic. Furthermore, squad cost ratio proposals were voted for in shadow by clubs at the June AGM. The squad cost ratio proposals under discussion align closely with existing UEFA financial rules, which a number of our clubs are already subject to. The objectives of the proposals include maintaining the Premier League's competitive balance and ensuring clubs operate in a financially sustainable way. There you go. So what is it? Well, it used to be sustainability and sustainability and a profitable regulation, PSR, right? Profit and sustainability. Now they're throwing in there competitive balance. It never used to be about that. I'm an advocate of it. I think it should be leveled out. And that's coming from someone that's knocking on the door and under threat of others. But also, if Tottenham fans can be a proponent of it, you better believe that everybody else below there is as well, right? They want to see a level playing field. And it's good for business. It's good. You want to see a system whereby leagues like this one this year, where Leicester have been able to beat Tottenham and Crystal Palace and Ipswich. You want to see that, but not just because the top team is having an absolute mare with injuries and form and a crisis of confidence, but because the balance, the gulf between the two is eroded. Last night was a demonstration, again, with notwithstanding the injuries, the crisis of confidence, but you saw as clear as day the difference between Liverpool and Tottenham. And Liverpool aren't even a team that takes advantage of their financial success in balance. But Manchester City have done, and Newcastle will do. And it's not a criticism of them if you're watching this on Spurs, on Sean Butler TV. It's just an observation. And Chelsea certainly have, right? Spending a billy. Burnley couldn't do that. Everton couldn't do that. They tried and they failed. And look what nearly happened to them. Nottingham Forest, Southampton, none of those teams can do that. And Chelsea are not the recipient, the beneficiary of anything other than a very fortuitous set of circumstances that allowed that to happen. And I've said this a million times. It's not because of their brilliance on the pitch. They've been terrible for the last few years. It's because of Roman Abramovich selling at $1.5 billion deficit under what market valuation was, because he had to get out of town because of the war with Russia. And then Todd Bowley coming in and taking up, and with a promise of spending X amount of money, which happened to be, wait for it, £1.5 billion. It's a joke. It's embarrassing. Other teams can't do that. Tottenham couldn't do that, even if we were bought out tomorrow. So sustainability is one thing, but a level playing field is another. And until the Premier League lawmakers and PFA are trying to get in there and curtail this, they're trying to curtail it. Why? Ask yourself why. Who's paying those people? Who's scratching their back? And why? Why is it that limiting the amount of spend of the financially most prudent and the financially most aggressive overspenders to 5 times the bottom club? Why is that a bad thing? It creates competitive implementations. It creates a playing field where the gulf between the two will not be, on any given Sunday, will not be that stark. It's better for business. It's better. You want a league where anyone can beat anyone on their day, but yet achievement and success is still rewarded, which at the moment it's out of sync. But these rules will make it it won't be perfect. It'll still be a mess, but at least it will bring things back to something like a realistic playing field where you get away from this notion where 92% of all fucking trophies are won by the same 5 bloody teams, and two teams win 75% over the last 12 years. It's boring. It's boring. And the PFA are coming in saying, nah, sorry, you haven't really explained or justified why. I just did. There you go. That's your reason. And for what it's worth, you don't really, as far as I'm aware, have any say in the fucking story anyway, because the Premier League have the right to dictate their own path. That's how it works. That's how it works under the Premier League rules. 15 teams vote in favour of an amendment. The amendment is implemented. The PFA can shove it up their arse. While we remain open to the discussions and feedback, we are extremely disappointed that instead of engaging with the substance of the proposals, the PFA has chosen to issue legal demands. Clubs will continue to evaluate the proposal with a view to bringing them to a vote at the appropriate time. The Premier League have already agreed to replace PSR rules for the 25-26 season with a squad cost control. The squad, the cost control will limit clubs to spending 85% of their total revenue on wages, transfers, payments, and agents' fees, anchoring would fix a ceiling on that spending, and is generally being supported by those clubs who fear the growing power of the richest and those such as City who are backed by sovereign wealth funds. Let me know your thoughts, guys. I'm done with the reading off of the thing. I'll just spend 5 more minutes with you. Let me know. You should watch the J Minerals podcast today. Excuse me. I will if it's any good. Think of it as paying Abramovich back through multi-club signings. Exactly. Replay crew here. I liken Tottenham currently to the Red Sox right before John Henry and the group came in. Great history, long drought, a good owner, change works wonders. Only in that scenario, Mr. Moran. For what it's worth, Everton changed their owner 3 times. How did that work out? Leicester have changed their owner. How did that work out? Derby went bankrupt. Came back, administration. Came back, administration. How did that work out? Port Vale, Southampton, Leeds. Never-ending list of changing owners. Aston Villa, have they won success? Not yet. Are they financially up to their eyeballs in risky ratios? 100%. Have they had to join the dark forces of the rest in order to get themselves out of trouble by getting these suspiciously, ridiculously valued deals for John Duran? Good player, but not 67 million pounds. Well, actually, to be entirely honest, if Richarlison's worth 60 million, I guess valuation's in the eye of the beholder, right? But like, at the end of the day, oh, I just heard my phone vibrate. I've been looking for my phone all day. Where is it? My phone is somewhere around here. Anyway, yeah, sorry, mate. Yeah, listen, it might have worked out for the Red Sox, and it did, but there's a far longer list of clubs who changed their owner when their fans demanded change and more ambition that ended up going Pete Tong than there is examples of stories where it's all worked out for the best. And the ones that do, well, they have a certain shape and feel about those owners that come with their own sorts of challenges, their own sorts of compromises. I'm not saying any of them are right or wrong. I'm just saying that you have to be on board with certain things if you want what's important to you. Again, I'll go back to the people that say, bring me in the oil money, bring me in that stuff, because all I don't care about there's no such thing as a clean billionaire. Look at Joe Lewis. Look what he did in the Central America zone. I hear you, right? There is no such thing as a clean billionaire. Totally agree with you. So what is it you're after? You're after success, right? Give me the oil money because that will be better for success. Okay. But a lot of those people that were saying that 6 months ago, as soon as the wind starts to pick up direction towards the momentum that they want, suddenly success is no longer the priority. And Daniel Levy out is the priority, despite the fact we were on the cusp of success had we managed to get past Liverpool last night, which let's be honest, on reflection, was probably a really long shot. A long shot anyway, despite my initial optimism that I thought we were going to do it. Anyway, guys, listen, I've been going for 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I've got so much more to talk about, but it's better to just leave it here. Get over to Sean Butler TV if you like the financial side of football. I'll be analysing it. I'm going to go and enjoy one of the kind Blaine Devlin donations into my Thatcher's pot. And thank you very much for listening to me But let me know your thoughts in the section below. Sorry for the kind of the upside. Oh, no, I'm on the mum. Go away. So 1 second. Always embarrassing. She's around doing the ironing. There's Bugsy, by the way. People were saying, "Where's Bugsy?" There she is. Oh, Bubba. What are you gonna do? You saying hello to everyone? There she is. She's not happy with me for some reason either. Anyway, guys, I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts. See, Harry is still annoying her. This is like this all the time. Bloody vets, £1,300, and I've got a miserable dog who's got a bad ear. Worse ear now than before. Let me know your thoughts. Like, subscribe, and comment. See you on the next one. As always.